We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelek of Beis, volume 22, and this is the first Sicha for the Parshas Tzav. The Rebbe bases himself on a commentary of his father, Agon Rebbe Levi Yitzchok, on the Zohar, and the Rebbe says that there are still things that are not understood, and his father relied that the people that are simple will be able to figure it out on their own. And the Rebbe explains the two languages that his father explained over there in the Korbanos, and basically that there is a level of Gevura in Korbanos, there's a level of Chesed, there's a level in which the Gevura comes out, there's a level in which the kindness, the Chesed comes out. And the Rebbe is going to elaborate and explain in great detail a lot of these the specifics over here. So we'll learn inside Tzav. So first, the Rebbe brings down the Zohar, that the fire in the pasuk, it says that there was a constant fire on the Mizbeach. So the Rebbe brings down that constant fire was in the shape of an ari, shape of a lion. And the Zohar uses two languages over there. About the fire that came down onto the arrangement of the Mizbeach, was given from Mizbeach, which was on the Mizbeach, in Atziyur, it was in a shape of Revutzo Ka'ari. It was kneeling like a lion. And the state in Zohar von Heintiker Sedra, so it says in the Zohar of today's portion, Ados is der Malach Uriel. That is the angel Uriel. The Uriel, the Ari, is from Uriel. Was bavais in dem Tzir. That angel appears in this shape of a lion, Uriel. Und dabei sagt der Zohar zwei Lashonos, the Zohar uses two languages to describe how the lion is kneeling on the Mizbeach. Prior state, first it says, as is chazi kichizu the chad ariot takifa revio al tarfe kichizu, like the shape, it looks like of a lion, a powerful lion, ariot takifa, of one powerful lion who is kneeling revia al tarfe, over his prey. And then later on he says, V'ischazi, he appears like a big lion, revia al korbana, kneeling over the korbanos. Seemingly close, but different. So my father bases himself on the change of languages. That the changes that Frier state Aleph. The one change is that Frier state Aryeh Tekifa, powerful lion. Ubepamasheni state Aryeh Rabrava, big lion. Number two, different is Frier state the Revia al Tarfe, that he's kneeling over his prey. And the Noch state the Revia al Korbone, that he is kneeling over the korban. And that is Mevair. So the Rebbe's father explains, as in Aryeh shebemerkove hel yoinom seinen dot zwei inyonim, that in the lion, which is part of the supreme chariot, in the vision of Yecheskel, the Merkov Yoina, seinen dot, was a lion there. So over there, seinen dot zwei inyonim, there's two aspects there, Chesed ugvura. There's Chesed ugvura. But we see, how does Aryeh have both? Because on one hand, Aryeh is Bigimatria Gvura. The numerical value of the word Aryeh is the same as the word Gvura. That means that it is strength. But on the other hand, Aryeh also has Shtetoch B'nei Aryeh El Hayamin, that the face of the Aryeh was on the right. The right is known Chesed. That means that there is two, the Chesed and Gvura. And the way the Rebbe's father explains, the Rebbe Yitzchak explains, und das ist der Biur, the Chiluki HaLishonos. This explains the different languages. Priya read the Zohar. First, the Zohar talks wegen them in Hagavura Shabariye. He talks about the aspect of the strength that is in the lion. The Far Zokter, and that's why he says Aryeh Tekifa, a strong lion, Revia al Tarfe, kneeling on his prey. Because Tekifa, Teikef V'choizek, the force and strength, Beister Gevura, that represents, that shows on strength. Because we're talking about the Gevura. When you use the language of his prey, how could you be toiref? That comes because of the strength that the Aryeh has to attack the prey. So that is the Gevura part. Then we discuss, the Zohar talks about the level of kindness Aryeh. The Far Zokter over there says, he says, a big lion, but on the Karbonis. Ravreve Godel, when you say big, Meist of Chesed. Chesed is called big. So the spheres, so Chesed is represented by Gedula. So Gedula Gvura. Un Oich, so that's why it's Ravreve, it's Godel. Un Oich Korbono, we say it's a Korban. Korban comes Beloshin Kiruv, Loshin from close. So it's Ravreve, it's a Chesed, Kiruv Kup Mitzad Chesed, that comes from the side of Chesed Yemin. Our sages, a blessed memory said, the right hand brings close. So there is the aspect of Yemin, of the level of Chesed that's in the Aryeh, that's the Ravreve, that's the Godel, that's Chesed, and it's Revi al Korbana on the kindness and the Yemim Mekarebes. So the Rebbe says that his father left certain thing unclear, not articulated it, because he relied that people will understand on their own. The Rebbe wants to know why the Zohar splits it up into two separate and doesn't combine them together, these two aspects of the lion, because they are all part of the same character trait that the Rebbe will describing the lion, as the Rebbe will continue explaining. Base. The Geret kam upon him, as spoken many times, and in the Hores von Taten geschrieben geworden bekitzer. The notes of my father were written brief, und in Yonim was der Leimed Ayin can sich allein chappen say, and those matters that the one who's learning and looking into is able to catch on his own, is a nit mevayer, so he doesn't explain it. So when you learn this note, so we get a question in the language of the Zohar. As an Aryeh, since the lion, the Zelber Aryeh, we're talking about one lion over here. He includes these two aspects, the Gevura and the Chesed, Sai Chesed and Sai Gevura, both Chesed and Gevura. Pravos zu teltes der Zohar in zwei Fallen. So how come the Zohar splits it up in two cases? Aryeh Tekifa Revi al Tarfe, one this forceful lion kneeling over the prey, and Aryeh Ravreve, and a big lion Revi al Korbonai kneeling over the Korbanos. Und sagt nicht beide Sachen zusammen. Why doesn't he combine them both together? He should say Aryeh Tekifa Ravreve, a forceful great lion, Revi al Tarfe al Korbona, is kneeling on its prey on the Korbonu Ki. Well, but these are two separate characteristics, but they're still part of the same. As Chesed und Gevura seinen zwei Besondere, even though Chesed and Gevura are different. Not only different, they are opposites. Zog doch aber der Tate in der Haores, yet my father says in this note, Ados was an Arya hat sei Chesed und sei Gevura. That the Arya has both Chesed and Gevura, seinen es nicht kein zwei besondere Fallen. These are not two separate cases. Nor sees kimoi oir ha-Gevura b'kli ha-Chesed. Like we say, the light of Gevura in the vessel of Chesed. So it's one, but it's a light with the Keli, and the oir is the Gevura in the Kli ha-Chesed. But the far, seinen beide verbunden mit Klolus Inyan Arya, they are therefore connected to the general idea of Arya, which is the gematria for Arya is Gevura. What is the gematria? That is Gevura. So that means Arya is strength. Unoich bepashlis is the Gevura for the Tchunas Arya, and it's actually not just because the gematria, but that's the characteristic of the lion is the strength. As we say, strong like a lion. Und zusammen damit, so and together being a lion and strength is Pnei Arya Lamin. The face of the lion is to the right. So that means it's not different. It is within the Gevura of the lion there is the Chesed. When Al-Derech says Euch benegeit to the Karbonis, the same thing is with regard to this Karbonis, was werden angerufen do in Zohar mit beide Lashonos. Over here, the Zohar refers to them with the two languages. Tarfei, the prey, which represents Gevura, and Korbona Chesed. So muss doch jeder Korban haben in sich beide Tchunas. Each Korban, not that one Korban has Gevura and one has, every Korban has both characteristics. Gevura v'Chesed. How so? The Akrova agabe Mizbeach is a halah, milmata l'mayla. Bringing it on the Mizbeach, that's elevating from below to above. That's Gevura. Elevation. Das poil der noch. After you first bring it up, it impacts later on. Nachas ruach. It is a pleasant lefonai. Hamshochas. That means that you bring down tainug milmayla lamato chesed. You bring down the delight from Hashem from above to below, which is chesed. So you have in the same behema, you have the elevation, the gevura, and then the nachas. So this is also two steps, but the Rebbe says there's more than that. Not two aspects of the korban, the same idea in the korban. The offering to Hashem, the elevation, is in an oifun. It is in such a way as a tail bleibt iber lemato far the achilas bailim of the kohanim. That it's such a way you bring it to Hashem, but part of it remains below for the eating of the owners, those who brought the korban or the kohanim. And the Rebbe adds, also the burnt offering, which is totally consumed for Hashem, without the bailim of the kohanim, is the chayre l'kohen, but yet the skin of the animal does go to the kohen. Unafila minchas kohen, even we're talking about a meal offering, which doesn't have skin over there. So kohen was kolil toktor. That the mincha of the kohen is totally burnt. There's no koimetz, there's nothing left over. Is that inyan fundem korban? So what is the idea of the korban? As durch im werder kohen is chanech likunosei. That educates. That's the korban minchas kohen, that he becomes educated and inaugurated for kahuna. Or the lechaper olov by minchas kohen oni, or by a minchas kohen oni who brings also a meal offering over there. It's used to atone for him, and it's totally burnt. Kohen Osher, that comes by a Kohen Oni, that comes instead of the cattle of a Kohen Osher. But yet that mincha is burned totally. But it doesn't mean that they don't get anything. He gets his kahuna, and it's chanach laguna. So he gets something. So in the carbon itself, there is the elevation part and what's left below. For the Kohen, for the Bailim, or Valderich says that Nachas Ruach Lefonoi was kum durch Korbanos. The same thing is in the elevation part, that it is a blessedness and Hamshochas HaTainug that comes to Korbanos, der Kiruf, Chesed from the Meiberstum to Makriv HaKorban, that closeness, that kindness from Hashem to the one who brings the Korban, is verbunden. How do you get that? Omarti v'naseritzoni, with the fact that Hashem says, why does he have the pleasantness that I said, and my wishes were done, folgun und bittel, to, that represents Gevura, to listen and to subjugate. Und das drückt sich euch in Kiyum HaTorah Mitzvahs, and this expresses itself in the fulfillment in Torah Mitzvahs, was das als you're doing Hashem's will, meaning you're doing the Torah Mitzvahs, this is bring the Nachas Ruach, is alt verbunden mit Gevura. This is all a level of Gevura. So that Chesed is verbunden mit Gevura, because all the laws are limited. They come from Gevura. Anhogin ha'ifel mugbal dafke, those are conduct in a limited way, like Dinei Mishpat Torah, according to the laws of Mishpat Torah. So doing the mitzvahs, which brings the Nachas Ruach, Amarti v'naser etzornei, is listening a bittel and limitations, all the mitzvahs. Limitations is Gevura. So the Chesed comes with Gevura. So now people say, since it's all really combined together, or the Zohar gedarf zogen beidin yonim dafke zusammen, so the Zohar should have specifically said both of these, should have said both of these aspects together. Zu weisen auf der Hiskalus, to point in the inclusion of the Chesed and Gevura sheba Aryeh, of the Chesed and Gevura that is in the Aryeh. Gimel. The Rebbe says that's actually in the revealed, what comes out, it's one of the two come out. Either the Chesed comes out or the Gevura comes out. Gimel Yishleim and the Kudus Habir Bezeh. The point of the explanation is Hagam in Aryeh Zayin Do Beida Kabim. Although Aryeh includes both lines, Chesed and Gevura, kindness and stringency zusammen together, is aber farana chiluk in zeir gilui. There is still a different, what is revealed, what comes out, what do we see, what is the revelation? Amol is gevura begilui, under chesed behelim. Sometimes the strength, the gevura is open, and the kindness is hidden. Amol hepech, sometimes the other way around. The far teltes der zoyar in zwei besondere Fallen. That's why the Zohar divides it into two cases. Aryeh Tkifa Revi Al Tarfe. First, you have that Gevura, the forceful of the lion who is kneeling over his prey. Weil eret in der Darge von Aryeh, because here we're talking about the lion when the Kava Gevura is begilu, when the line of strength of Gevura is open. The Kava Chesed behelm, and then the Chesed is hidden. The Noch Zokter Aryeh Ravrava Revi Al Korbona. Then he says the second, that the large lion kneeling on the Korbanos, Valaret wegen the Darge von Aryeh, because over here he's speaking about the level of Aryeh when the Kava Chesed is begilu, when the line of Chesed is open, and the Kava Gevura is Behelam. Well, okay, so we have, sometimes we see Gevura, sometimes we see Chesed. That's the different expressions. But when do we see Gevura? What does it consist, the Gevura and the Chesed that we see? Therefore, we verstehen, what we need to understand, in was besteht der Tamachiluk zwischen the zwei Fallen. What is the reason in the difference between these two cases? Tzidar Kav. Why is sometimes we see Gevura, sometimes we see Chesed? Tzidar Kav Gevura is Begilui, or the Kava Chesed, whether it's the line of Gevura or the line of Chesed. Why? Why is it? As the Rebbe will explain. In Ois Daled, the Rebbe will explain that the two levels of the Aryeh coincide with the emotional that is brought down in the Medrash, that the gift was brought to the king, and then the king said, accept the gift that was brought to me. So when it is just as the gift that you bring on your own in the beginning, that's like the level of Aryeh, which is Torif. But when the Eibishter says, give me the gift, I want to accept the gift, that already becomes the higher level, the level of chesed, of closeness, as the differences the Rebbe will explain between the 7 days of inauguration, the Shiva Shivei HaMiluyim, and the B'Yom HaShemini, the difference between those days, that in the beginning it was mitzad the people, the Shiva Shivei HaMiluyim. And then Vateitze Eish Milifnei Hashem, that's the level of the kirva, the higher level. Let's look inside. Dalet. That man does verstehen davon will understand it from the fact that was either the Zohar zog dem zweiten Inyan, before the Zohar says the second idea, the second concept, Ka'arye Ravrva Revi al Korbono, like a large lion kneeling over its korban, Izar Magdim, he introduces Aleph as dos is Kimoshul Hamelech. An example, there was a king, was men hot im geschickt adoiron, us is im gefallen geworden. A king that he was sent a gift and the king liked it. Hat gesagt la'avdei, so he said to his servant, Zil vetul doiron do the siuli. Go ahead and take this gift that they brought for me. So the Zohar continues. Amar Uriel. Shem says to Uriel, that's the Malach Uriel, which is in the shape of an Aryeh on the Mizbeach. Zil v'kabel durono de bonai craving kamoi. Go ahead, accept the gift of my children, that they bring for me. So this tells us that level of Ari, the Achel Kurbana, comes as a result from Omar Kuchibrichud to be Makabel that Doira. Another point is base that the Zohar says, as if them Inyan state on this idea, it's stated Vateitze Eish Milifnei Hashem Vatoichel ala Mizbechas Oile v'Goymer, that the fire went out from Hashem and it consumed the Mizbech the Oilo. And this idea of Amar Kuchibrichu do Uriel, the Nochas bechizu the Esha chulu lekabolo duruno. That is Ariel who comes down in the shape, in the look of the fire, to accept this gift. Unoif them, and on this Dr. Zohar is Chazik Rabbi Revi al Korban, that it appears like a large lion kneeling on the korban. So basically, that this appearance of an Aryeh Ravreva al Korbana is associated with these two aspects. One, that it comes after Hashem says the gift is brought, that Kabel Durono, and second of all, that it's associated with Vateitze Eish Milifnei Hashem, which took place in the Yeshmini Luyim. So based on this, we can say as in them inyan funuriel Arya dochel kurbanim. That aspect of a riyah, when it's a lion that eats the kurbanim, there's two ways. There is the first way before the king says be makabel the korban, and then is after the king says be makabel the korban. Vidos is mitzad atzmei. Aleph, number one, as it is on its own, was demult is that iker boy. At that point, what is the main thing of that korban? Inyan hagavura. The main thing is the idea of strength, gavura. Ariyeh tikifa revi al turfe, like a powerful, a lion, a gibber who is kneeling over its prey. But base is the second thing when Omar HaKodesh Baruch Hu Uriel Zil v'Kabil Duruna. It's when Hashem says, it's not on their own, but Hashem says, go ahead and accept their gift. When you receive a command, and that means you get the power, Hashem gives you the koyach from above, so mekabel zayin the korbanos to accept this korbanos. When Uriel gets instruction from Hashem, go ahead and take the korbanos. Was dos wird aufgetan. This is accomplished durch them, was in der Hakrove Shalom Odom, that when the person gives it, is mudgish, it is emphasized as bringt es als adoiren, kidel kamon. That when it is like a gift, it's a doiren, it's a gift. Damult werden die Gevuris nishapich lachasodim. Then the stringency, the strength, the gevura, turns around into chesed, chasodim, to kindness. Und der Fahr at that point is that inyan ha-chesed by imbegilu. Then the chesed of Uriel at that point is begilui because it is a doiran. So they start, they bring it a doiran, and when the Eibishter says zil v'tul doiran, as the devil explained doiran, that's when it turns it around from gevura to chesed. Und der Fahr verbindet der Zohar dem Fall Davke. That's why the Zohar associates, connects this case. This is after, not when Torif, that the Aryeh Takifa, but before the Aryeh, the Revi al Kurbono, the Aryeh Rabriva, is associated with Vateitze Eish Milifnei Hashem Goimer, that the fire comes from before Hashem. As the Rebbe will explain, the difference between the Eish, the way it is on the Yom HaShmini, and the way it was in the 7 days before. Over here, it's connected to Vateitze Eish Milifnei Hashem, that special fire that came down Yom HaShmini. While the Vateitze Eish is given b'Shmini L'Meluim, because this fire that came out was on the 8th day of inauguration. Und der Shinui in dem Eish Shebedemus Aryeh Rabriva Chulu, and this change in the fire that was in the shape of a large Legabe Aryeh Tekifa Chulu, relative as opposed to the time, the beginning of the Zohar, that it was a forceful lion. The difference between a large lion and a forceful lion was ver durch Omar Kuchebrichu L'Uriel. The big lion becomes, after Hashem says to Uriel, accept it, and then it becomes a large lion canal, is bedugmas that is similar to the change, them shinui v'chidush, the change and the novelty from Shmini L'Meluyim Legabe Shivas Yimei HaMeluyim. The 8th day of inauguration relative to the 7th day of 7 days of inauguration. That is a similar change between the 7th and the 8th, as the change that takes place between the Gevura Lion, Aryeh Tekifa, and the Chesed the level of korban, the level of chesed that the lion appears, which is the same difference, and that's why the pasuk is brought down in the Zohar, Bateitze Eish B'Lifnei Hashem, the difference from before the 8th day during the Shiva Shemei Miluim and the 8th day. The Rebbe is going to explain now the difference between the Shiva Shemei Miluim and the 8th day. And the Rebbe is going to say that the first 7 days, it was the avodah from their own. And on the 8th day, it came milamaila, the Vateitze Eish. It was the powerful that it came from above. That's like the Zil V'Tul Doiren. Hey, Noachoin Amol Geret Ba'arucha, the Maimer Chazal, in the saying of our sages, Shekol Shivas Yimei HaMiluyim Sheha'amidoi Moshe LeMishkan LeShorso B'Shechino. So the sages of blessed memory, they say that during the 7 days of inauguration, in preparation for the 8th day, and Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and Moshe Rabbeinu was raising the Mishkan every day, but Lo Shorse B'Shechina, there was no divine presence at the time. The L'chayre, but it seems difficult to understand why. How come? Bald as Oich in the Shiva Shemei Miluim, since that also during the 7 days of inauguration, Hotman Makri given korbanos, they offered sacrifices. That it's a pleasant aroma for Hashem. So we had all these korbanos. How come? As the karbonos of nit oivgiton hashros hashchine mishkan, why did these offerings not accomplish the presence and the dwelling of the Shekhinah to rest in the Mishkan? How come in the 7 days now? So what is the explanation? So the explanation is as in hashros hashchina zayin faran kama dargis, in the resting of the divine presence and resting of the Shekhinah, there are several steps, several levels. In zwei darges, generally, you can divide them up into 2 levels. Aleph, number 1, Agilu Shechina v'skumt mitzad avodas anivra, the revelation of the divine that comes because of the service of the created being. And then it's kumidas avodas, and then it's measured. It hinges and depends on the measure of his service. That's the extent of the Shekhinah that you bring down. Ubemele is a smugbal, and therefore, since it hinges on the created being who is part of limited in the hishtalshlus, in the world, Ubemele is a smugbal b'seder ha hishtalshlus, so therefore, that level of presence of the Shekhinah is limited in the order of hishtalshlus. That is where the service of the created being reaches, is into that level. Ubeloshen hachasidus, and the language used in Chasidus, Isarusa dile eila was vert nimshach al yidei asarusa dile tato v'nimda dal yoda. It is an arousal from above, which is brought down through the arousal of below, and it's measured by her, which meaning it hinges, it's a connection from our Isarusa de Taita, which is limited, and the Isarusa de Leila that follows is measured according to how much the Avodah of the person, the Isarusa de Taita. That's one level. And Beis, the second level, is Ashros Ashchina Vaskumt Milamaila, the resting of the divine that comes from above. Fun Lamaila Mihishtalshlus, higher than Ishtalshlus. Was is Hecher von Avodas HaNivroim, which is higher than the service of the creation. It's a Sarusa de Le'ela Mitzad Atzmo. It's an arousal from above on its own, independent of the arousal from below. It's not initiated by the below, by Litato, but it's initiated Milamaylo. Und das ist der Chiluk zwischen Shiva Simei HaMiluim und Shmini Limeluim. And that's the difference between the 7 days and the 8th day. The Hakomas HaMishkan B'Shiva Simei HaMiluim, the raising of the Mishkan during the 7 days of the inauguration, is given the Hachone V'Avoida Mitzad Hamato Zum Gilu Shchina B'Mishkan. That was a preparation, and it was the service during the 7 days, because from the perspective came from the initiation from below. Zum Gilu Shchina B'Mishkan, to get the revelation of the divine in the Mishkan, came from below. Was die Avoida Mamshich given a Gilu Shchina from B'chinas Hishtalshlus. That service elicited a revelation of the divine of Hishtalshlus, on the level of Hishtalshlus. Und der Pfarrer seinen given Shivas Yimei Hamilum. That's why we have 7 days of inauguration. Keneged Shivas Yimei Habinyan. That corresponds to the 7 days of the building of the world, which is divided up into the 7 spheres. Hishtalshlus is all the level of Hishtalshlus. Masha'enkim b'shmini limeluyim, as opposed to when it came day, the 8th day of is givorn der gilu hashchina mitzad lamayla. So then the revelation of the divine came from above. By Yero kveid Hashem gomer, by teitze eish milifnei Hashem. The glory of Hashem appeared. Fire came out from before Hashem. From b'china shmini, from the level of shmini, was his hecher from hishtalshlus, which is higher than the hishtalshlus. So we have the 2 levels, the levels when the work, the initiation from the people, from the below, from the Nivroim, bring about the Shekhinah limited. Then we have, and that's the 7 days of Miluim. Then we have when it comes from above, when it's initiated from above, which is higher. But when the Rebbe explains now, when we say it's initiated above, it doesn't mean it just doesn't come from above, even though it's not initiated by the below, but yet the Seder, the way the Eibishter instituted is that first the person should do his avodah from below, and then there will be the initiation from above. Afal pi vav, afal pi as b'chinas shmini is hecher fun hishtalshlus, even though shmini is higher than hishtalshlus, u'b'meila fun avodas adam, and therefore it is higher than the person's service to elicit it. Afal pi kain, and yet still, kidei as the giluyim shalamayla, so that these revelation of above zolu needs zayin in an oifel. They should not be in a way from shameful bread, which means you get things for nothing, which is called shameful bread. You have to work for it. So if it's just going to come from above without the person's doing it all, then it would be shameful bread. So is eingestellt geworden. So the Eibishter is set up as alle hamshochas kumen durch, that all things that are extend from above comes through oder hagdomas avodah, or you need to first have avodah. Either it elicits it, either it initiates it, or at least you have to introduce first to do the avodah sod. In them inyan gufa, as we see in this matter itself, as Eiders is givorun the hashros hashchina b'mishkan b'shmini limeluyim, that before the divine rested in the Mishkan on the 8th day of the inauguration, had gemus sign, there had to be in the Yom Hashmini gufa, in this 8th day itself, korbanes arein v'avedose. So it didn't just come from above, but it needed still the korbanes of Aaron and his service was durch them alam davke, because it's only through all this Tishre Shechina Bochem will the Shechina dwell by you. So you still need the Korbanos avarni, you need the mato, you need to do the work. Nor vibald es retzich wegen hashros hashchina. But since we are discussing here, we are talking of a resting of the divine, was is hecher fun geder hanivroim, which is higher than the definition, the boundaries of the creation, is move on. So it's understood that the service that the person does, there's a difference also. As is chilik, that there's a difference in toichen ha'avodah, in the meaning and the content of the service, was is goyrem the hashros hashchina, that brings about the divine resting presence. Gabe der avodah was is mamshich dem erfun seder shtalshlus, relative as opposed to the avodah, which brings down the light only of Ishtalshlus. So while also the light of higher than Ishtalshlus needs to also have the service of the person as an introduction before the light of higher than Ishtalshlus can come down, yet it's understood that the avodah is different, as the Rebbe explains in Isaiah. But man das verstehen, bei Hagdim, was wir gefunden, will understand this by introducing that we find as nit kukendik of them, despite the fact was beshivas yimei hamiluyim, that also during the 7 days of inauguration, hot Aaron gebracht a par echot, he also brought one bull, and that bull was brought lechaper al maisa egel shu par, to atone for the act of the egel, which is a bull, as Rashi brings down into Tzav of Tasalev. Afal pikein, and yet hoter bayoim hashmini bider gedav bringen, and still he needed on the 8th day to bring again an egel ben bokor lechatos, a calf, a young cattle, as a chatos offering. He brought it already before in the Siyos Yimei, and still he has to bring another one for a chatos. What is this chatos for? Lohidia shemechaper lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu al eidei egel zeh al ma'isa egel sha'asa, to let him know, as the pasuk says in Rashi, to tell him that Hashem forgives him through this calf that he's bringing for a chatos, this egel ben bakar, on the act of the egel that he did. So why would Aaron need another atonement of this egel ben bakar lechatos when we brought a par echa during the Shivas Yimei HaMiluyim to atone for the Heta egel, for the sin that he has sinned? Why was it necessary to have noch a korban, an additional korban, lahoidia, to let know shemechaper lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu al yidei egel zeh, that Hashem is forgiving him through this egel? Ken men zogen, so we can say as der teuchen und der kapora, the meaning, the content. What is this? It's a different kind of kapora than before. This kapora is nit kaporas nafshay. It's not to atone for your soul. It's not a forgiving, but nor b'l'shoin from Alten Rebbe, but to use the language of the Rebbe, lechaper lifnei Hashem liyos nachas ruach l'koinoi, to atone before Hashem in a way that you becomes a pleasantness of spirit to his creator, to Hashem. So this is not just to forgive the past, but to become a nachas ruach l'koinoi. In the korbanos from Shivas Yimei HaMiluyim, in those sacrifices that you brought in the 7th day of inauguration, was haben oiv gitona hamshacha von hishtalshlus, which accomplished to bring down from the hishtalshlus, was his berach hanivroim, which is connects and has a relationship with the Creator. It's in their level measure. Is das verbunden mit kaporas nafshe shalom? Then that's associated with atoning, forgiving, getting a kapora for the person shalom as ozayim b'shleimus, that he should be complete. That's the forgiving. That's the kapora for himself, for the nefesh. Mas enkin the korbanos was darfen bringen them gilu milmaila, as opposed to those korbanos that need to bring the revelation from above, from higher than Ishtalshalus, the Vayem Hashmini, from the Meir Shalamaylam, Ishtalshalus Vinivroyim, from the light which is higher than Ishtalshalus and the created being, is Teuchenam Adiren. They are a gift. So Farshafu Nachas Ruach Lekoinei, to cause a pleasantness of spirit to Hashem, Al Derech Maimer Chazal, similar to this saying of our sages, Ilav the Ovid lay naichal nafshi lahave yohiv lay matanto, that when a person gives a gift, there has to be a reason. Had he not done something good for him, he would not give him a gift. So a gift that you give, in this case to Hashem, this is for the Naicha Nafshi. This is to make a Nachas Ruach Lekoine, and that's why there's a gift over there. And this is der Diuk Haloshin, and that's the specific language Lehoidia Shemechaper LeHaKadosh Baruch Hu Kulu, to let us know that Hashem forgives him. Nit vi by Shiva Simei Amiluim, over there Rashi says it's lechaper, it's to atone, because that was the level of atonement for himself. Chaper amaisa egel. But over here, when we talk about the egel, ben bakar lechatas of shminim and luim, over there it says lehoidia. While the korbanos from shmini lemeluim, because the sacrifice of Shmini Elohim is verbunden mit Chavivus. They are associated with a special dearness, as mizmerutze v'chaviv lefonav yizborech, that we are willing, we are accepted and dear for Hashem. Was the Faris men medio megale shemechaper leHaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why you notify and you reveal that Hashem forgives him, because this is all has to do with the level of special love and dearness and the level of Nachas Ruach. So his Media will notify, reveals that it's forgiven. That's the special dearness. Not only that it's forgiven, but it's actually a announcement and a revelation that is forgiven. It comes because of the dearness. Bikol Hanal, based on all the above it, men verstehen dem Tam, now we will understand. The reason was der Zohar tellt voneinander die zwei Inyonim shebe'aryeh, that the Zohar divides these two aspects in the lion in zwei besondere mamorim, in two separate sayings. Der Eish Shelamayla b'dmus Aryeh, he talks about the fire above in the image of a lion. Was kommt mit Tzad Avodas HaKarbonis B'chlal, which comes from the service of the Karbonis in general, is von Bechinas Hishtalshlus. That is from the level of Hishtalshlus, was is an Mugba, which is a limited light. Und der Fahr is der Iker Boy, the main in him is Inyan HaGavura V'Hatzimtzum. The main thing is the Gavura and Tzimtzum. Aryeh Tekifa Reviya Al Tarfe, the tough, powerful lion that is kneeling on its prey. Aber mitzadem inyan korbanos was seinen adoren, but from the perspective, from the part that the korbanos are a gift, they are a gift for Hashem, to farshafen anachas ruach l'koinei, to bring about, to cause a pleasantness of spirit to his creator. Werd aufgetan Hamshocha von der Meila Ishtalshlus. Over here, you accomplish bringing down from higher than Ishtalshlus. That's why it says Omar Kuchabrichu Uriel. That's already Kuchabrichu coming from the Meila Ishtalshlus, telling to Uriel. That's the shape changes into a korban, to a closeness. Al derech bateitze eish lifnei Hashem koimer from Shemin Limeluim, similar to the fire that comes from Lifnei Hashem on the 8th day of inauguration. Was demoled at that point, at that time, werden die Gevuris nepach nishapach lechasodim. The stringencies are turned to kindness, und der far, and that's why, as a result, is chazire ke'ariye rabravo. You see, like a big line, revi al korbono. Now it's kneeling on the korban, on the closeness, gilu achasodim davke, the revelation of kindness specifically. This is Mesiches Shabbos Parshas Tzav, Tavshin Lamed Gimel, and the Tavshin Mem.